Hey guys, welcome to the Bitcoin Fortress podcast, helping you increase your financial freedom. This is episode 113, recorded here on April 28th, 2024. This podcast is for entertainment only and is not investing advice, so please do your own homework. Well, we got a lot to talk about this week. It was a bad week if you are a believer in digital freedom and liberty, and it's so bad that I don't even have a FUD of the week because there's just so much FUD in just the normal news stream. So we'll go through all that. First, we'll start with the market update and outlook, though. So with the market update, what a difference a week can make after posting its worst weekly performance in over a year last Friday. The S&P 500 rebounded this week to score its best performance since October 2023. The rise was primarily driven by a surge in technology stocks and other growth sectors anchored by favorably received quarterly reports from Tesla, Microsoft, and Alphabet. However, aside from earnings, market participants received a bit of a reality check in the form of economic data on GDP and core PCE that pointed to a stalling growth and sticky inflation. All eyes are now on the Federal Reserve's latest meeting on Tuesday and Wednesday. For the week, the S&P 500 gained 2.7%, the tech-heavy NASDAQ climbed 4.2%, and the blue-chip Dow rose 0.7%. So, a wild couple of weeks in the stock market, but I'm sure everything's fine. Looking ahead, it's a big week on the macro front with the Federal Reserve meeting and jobs report. Investors will look for more direction on whether the economy is heating or cooling. The interest rate policy statement from the FOMC will be watched more than any verbiage changes, with futures trading implying a 97% probability that interest rates will be kept at their current levels. Fed Chairman Jerome Powell's Q&A will also be closely watched for any hints on when the Fed might consider its first rate cut of the cycle. In corporate earnings, major reports are due from a wide range of companies across sectors, including ConocoPhillips, Pfizer, Coca-Cola, McDonald's, and Starbucks. Apple and Amazon wrap up reports from the Magnificent Seven. Cruise line operator Viking Holdings will launch its IPO, while AP Moller Maersk will officially spin off its towage and marine services activities unit. Chinese electric vehicle makers NIO, Li Auto, and XPeng will update on monthly deliveries, which could impact Tesla's share price if anything looks dramatic. Okay, jumping right into the top Bitcoin news. This first article here is from No Bullshit Bitcoin. It's a great source, highly recommend. They have a nice newsletter summary of news each week, and then they also have daily alerts. So it's free to sign up, and then they just take donations. So highly recommend that high signal thing. Anyway, this was posted April 22nd. Biden signs reauthorization of expanded FISA 702 warrantless surveillance program after it passes the Senate. On Saturday, President Biden approved the Reforming Intelligence and Securing America Act, a bill that reauthorizes Section 702 of the Foreign Intelligence Surveillance Act, or FISA, amidst debates over the FBI's use of the surveillance program to sift through American data. The provision effectively grants the NSA access to the communications equipment of almost any U.S. business, plus huge numbers of organizations and individuals. It's a gift to any president who may wish to spy on political enemies, journalists, ideological opponents, etc., said Elizabeth Goitein, co-director of the Liberty and National Security Program at the Brennan Center for Justice. The Senate passed the bill with a 60-34 bipartisan vote. This extends the Section 702 of the Foreign Intelligence Surveillance Act for 2 more years. Biden expressed gratitude to the congressional leaders for their efforts. Some lawmakers insisted on voting for amendments aimed at addressing perceived breaches of civil liberties within the bill. However, neither of the 6 proposed amendments gathered sufficient support to be included in the final pass of the law. And then a couple tweets. Elizabeth Goitein tweeted, "This is a shameful moment in the history of the United States Congress. It's a shameful moment for this administration as well, but ultimately it's the American people who will pay the price for this sort of thing, and sooner or later we will." And Edward Snowden had this to say: "American lost something important today and hardly anyone heard. The headlines of state-aligned media screech and crow about the nefarious designs of your fellow citizens and the necessity of foreign wars without end, but find few words for a crime against the Constitution." And so this is deeply troubling. I actually wrote about this in my blog a couple, maybe like a week ago. But of course, this thing just came and went so fast, there wasn't even time to call your congressman. Not that that really does anything, but it certainly doesn't hurt to let them know that you don't agree with this type of legislation. Anyway, moving on. The authoritarianism doesn't stop there. In the UK, new UK law empowering authorities to seize and destroy crypto assets takes effect today. This is from Bitcoin.com. This was posted 2 days ago. The British government announced on Friday that new powers to seize crypto assets used by criminals have gone live. The announcement states greater powers for the National Crime Agency to police to seize, freeze, and destroy crypto assets used by criminals have come into force today, asserting that organized criminals, including drug dealers, fraudsters, and terrorists, are known to increasingly use crypto assets to launder the proceeds of crime and raise money, the announcement describes. To tackle this emerging threat, the government has updated proceeds of crime and terror legislation, making it easier for UK law enforcement to effectively investigate, seize, and recover illicit crypto assets. Explaining the changes, the government detailed, police will no longer be required to make an arrest before seizing crypto from a suspect. How about that? This will make it easier to take assets which are known to have been criminally obtained, even if sophisticated criminals are able to protect their anonymity or are based overseas, the government emphasized, adding that items that could be used to give information to help an investigation, such as written passwords or memory sticks, can be seized. Officers will have the authority to transfer illegal crypto assets to an electronic wallet controlled by law enforcement, thereby preventing criminals from accessing these funds. In addition, UK law enforcement will be able to destroy a crypto asset if returning it to circulation is not conducive to the public good. Privacy coins, for example, are a form of cryptocurrency that grant an extremely high degree of anonymity and are often used for money laundering. The announcement adds victims can request the release of funds held in crypto assets account that belong to them. In January 2024, the National Crime Agency and the U.S. Drug Enforcement Administration seized $150 million in cash and crypto from a major drug operation. Moreover, 3 men received over 20 years for trafficking 750,000 pounds worth of counterfeit drugs. That's pounds like currency value of counterfeit drugs online for crypto. In another case, HM Revenue and Customs confiscated 3 non-fungible tokens and arrested 3 people in a 1.4 million pound VAT fraud. Adrian Searle, director of National Economic Crime Center, opined criminals are increasingly using crypto assets to conceal and move proceeds of crime at scale and pace, pay for other criminal services, and as a means to defraud victims. He stressed these new powers are very welcome and will enhance law enforcement's ability to restrain, recover, and destroy crypto assets if required. Well, this really sounds like a major expansion in law enforcement authority, and obviously they can, they can take it from you even if you haven't been arrested or charged with a crime, which sounds pretty bad. The narrative that seems to be developing is that crypto is this big problem with the nefarious types like drug traffickers and human traffickers and terrorists and all the bad folks. But when you really zoom out, it's such a small percentage of the big picture. It's almost, you can't, it's almost immeasurably small relative to the fiat currency system, which is, orders of magnitude larger. And that's where all the money laundering happens, all the serious money laundering. And it has all of the cooperation and collaboration with the banking system and I should call it the banking cartel, the banksters. And this is really just competition for them, and they don't like it. And, you have to also look on the other side of having Bitcoin, cryptocurrencies available that do grant privacy to people, which is not a crime. And people that are struggling under authoritarian regimes, dissidents, political dissidents, people that are being targeted, they have nowhere else to go. And so when you're trying to stamp this out on one side, saying criminals, criminals, you're also taking away a valuable tool for people that are actually fighting the good fight. And when you're talking about a market cap of a couple $1 trillion on, versus the monetary system, which is, 300-400 trillion, I don't know what the number is, but it's massively larger. When you zoom out, you really begin to see that this narrative doesn't really hold a lot of water, and yet they are trying to shut it down and scare people. And this is something you have to remember in the back of your mind when you're hearing about these things, is that they really don't want you to be self-sovereign. They don't want you to have assets that are outside of the system. They don't want you to use them in a self-sovereign way, and they're going to come up with all kinds of reasons why it's bad. And so this was a particularly bad week for that in terms of actions taken by the government. So in case you're wondering, this is called "And Then They Fight You." Next article, also from No Bullshit Bitcoin. This was posted on April 24th. EU Parliament adopts new financial surveillance rules for service providers. The new rules include enhanced due diligence measures and checks on customers' identity, after which obliged entities, for example, banks, assets and crypto assets managers, or real and virtual estate agents, must report suspicious activities to financial intelligence units and other authorities. The laws also give financial intelligence units, FIUs, more powers to analyze and suspend suspicious transactions. The legislation also contains enhanced vigilance provisions regarding ultra-rich individuals, total wealth worth at least 50 million euro, an EU-wide limit of 10,000 euro on cash payments, except between private individuals in a non-professional context, and measures to ensure compliance with targeted financial sanctions. The laws still need to be formally adopted by EU Council. Much of the new regulation kicks in after 3 years, but some member countries may choose to adopt these measures earlier. The rules also state that the Authority for Anti-Money Laundering and Countering the Financing of Terrorism, AMLA, will be established in Frankfurt. So again, got to keep cracking down, got to keep an eye on these things, because all the bad people are using cryptocurrency now. So you can see the narrative is not just in the United States. It's not just in the UK. It's in the EU. It's everywhere. Big news this week. This is also from No Bullshit Bitcoin. This was also posted on April 24th. Samurai Wallet founders arrested and charged with money laundering, unlicensed money transmitting offenses. Federal prosecutors charged Keone Rodriguez and William Lonergan Hill, founders of Samurai Wallet, with conspiracy to commit money laundering on Wednesday. Samurai's web servers and domain have been seized, and a seizure warrant for Samurai's mobile application was served on the Google Play Store. Per DOJ, the application will no longer be available to be downloaded from the Google Play Store in the United States. According to a press release, the duo developed, marketed, and operated the Mixer, which facilitated more than $100 million in money laundering transactions from illegal dark web markets. As alleged, Keone Rodriguez and William Lonergan Hill are responsible for developing, marketing, and operating Samurai, a cryptocurrency mixing service that executed over $2 billion in unlawful transactions and served as a haven for criminals to engage in large-scale money laundering. Rodriguez and Hill allegedly knowingly facilitated the laundering of over $100 million of criminal proceeds from the Silk Road, Hydra Market, and a host of other computer hacking and fraud campaigns. Together with our law enforcement partners, we will continue to relentlessly pursue and dismantle criminal organizations that use cryptocurrency to hide illicit conduct. And this is from U.S. Attorney Damian Williams. Prosecutors also indicate that Rodriguez, 35, and Hill, 65, garnered about $4.5 million in service fees for the CoinJoin services they provided. IRS CI Special Agent in Charge, Thomas Facciroso, said $2 billion in transactions with an unlicensed money transmitter means $2 billion flowed without any oversight from whomever to wherever. Samurai Wallet is now closed for business. The charges include conspiracy to commit money laundering and conspiracy to run an unlicensed money transmitting business. These charges could lead to a maximum sentence of 20 years and 5 years, respectively. And then there's several posts from Twitter users. This one from Francis at Bull Bitcoin. Let's hope that Samurai servers are well encrypted or they manage to wipe them remotely, because otherwise the users are fucked. According to a blog post written last September, self-hosted users constituted 85 to 90% of the total Whirlpool user base. Someone else, NoSphere888, posted, Whirlpool coordinator never touched XPubs. If you don't run your own node, then your wallet provider has your XPubs transaction history. Only 10 to 15% of users use Samurai's node. No PII was collected. Seth for Privacy posted, all Samurai websites down, GitLab down, coordinator down, can't even mix via Sparrow. A sad, sad day that has me shocked and in disbelief, but we won't stop fighting for our privacy. SPA-CTV Ellen Hance posted, if you are using Samurai Wallet from F-Droid, ensure auto updates are off. Don't get any dodgy Fed updates. And Diverter posted, you can restore your Samurai Wallet and any BIP39 compatible wallet in order to access your Bitcoin using your 12 words plus passphrase if you're not running your own node. And then there's a link here on help on restoration. And that's pretty much it for the article. So a lot of different takes on this. It's definitely serious. Probably the most troubling thing that I've heard from all of this is that, well, first of all, the government's got to prove its case in court. But they obviously wouldn't have unsealed the indictment and done this if they didn't think they had a good case. The one thing that I think these guys did that was wrong was, sort of marketing, directly to Russian oligarchs who are obviously sanctioned entities, or even to criminal organizations, which is part of the allegations, right? Is that there's documentation that they've tweeted or intentionally marketed to these folks. So that's kind of a problem, I guess. But probably the most concerning thing I've heard is that to be a money transmitter, you don't even have to have custody of the money, which is really interesting. Because this obviously the way Samurai Wallet works and the mixer works is it brings in transactions from multiple different wallets, mixes them all together, sends them back out, and that's it. So there's really they don't hold the assets. Basically, they just bring them in, randomize them, and send them back out. That's essentially what the mixer does in very, very simple terms. But the actual law says you don't actually even have to take custody to be considered a money transmitter. So that is troubling a lot of people because they're like, well, then what's your what's your Bitcoin self custody wallet then? Like if you send Bitcoin from your self custody wallet to someone else, are you now a money transmitter? Are you breaking the law? Um, and so the way I look at this is, um, well, I can have a transaction with someone. Let's say I want to buy a toy or, some clothes or a couch from someone. I can give them $100 cash, and that transaction is not tracked, traceable, or anything. And it's between the two of us, and that's it. And so I can do that. I can also give that person $100 worth of physical gold or silver, right? And that transaction it's a legitimate transaction. And if I don't want the government to know that I bought a couch for $100, well, I should have a right to that. I mean, this whole thing that every transaction is criminal is just complete bullshit. So I don't want the government to know that I bought a couch for $100 from this guy. So I could pay him in cash, I could pay him in gold or silver, or I could send him some Bitcoin. And I could either do it on chain, uh, or I could do it through Lightning. Of course, now there's going to be a few less choices in Lightning providers um, as a result of this, and we'll get to that later. But that's how you do it. So this kind of stuff doesn't stop people from being able to transact peer to peer, and there are many ways that you can do that. But the whole idea that everybody's a criminal, or that the vast majority, this is the narrative, the vast majority of all these transactions, of the reason why somebody has a mixer is because they're hiding criminal activity, is complete bullshit. It's about privacy, and privacy is a right, and it's protected by at least in the United States, by the United States Constitution. You know, they should be able to investigate you if you break the law, and that means you need to get a warrant, and you need to do your homework as law enforcement. You can't just surveil people and go, aha. That's authoritarianism. That's not acceptable, and it shouldn't be acceptable. So I think the more people become aware of this kind of stuff, uh, you know, um, hopefully the harder it's going to be for the government to continue this trend, which is a very, very troubling trend, no doubt about it. But anyway, that's my take on Samurai. So obviously it's terrible. We wish them luck. Um, they're facing 20, 25 years in prison. Um, and we also have a justice system that unfortunately punishes the good guys, and a lot of times doesn't lets the bad guys go, or gives them an easier path. So lots of problems. Next is and this sort of was a follow up to the Samurai thing. This was also from No Bullshit Bitcoin, posted on April 25th. FBI issues warning against using no KYC cryptocurrency money transmitting services. The FBI warns Americans against using cryptocurrency money transmitting services that are not registered as money services businesses, or MSBs, according to United States federal law, and do not adhere to anti-money laundering requirements, reads the public service announcement. The FBI has recently conducted law enforcement operations against cryptocurrency services which were not licensed in accordance with federal law. People who use unlicensed cryptocurrency money transmitting services may encounter financial disruptions during law enforcement actions, especially if their cryptocurrency is intermingled with funds obtained through illegal means, said the FBI. Cryptocurrency money transmitting services that purposefully break the law or knowingly facilitate illegal transactions will be investigated by law enforcement. Using a service that does not comply with its legal obligations may put you at risk of losing access to funds after law enforcement operations target those businesses, continues the alert. The agency then recommends avoiding cryptocurrency money transmitting services that do not collect know your customer information from customers when required, as well as check if they are registered with FinCEN. And then they offer some tips to protect yourself, which you can read. I'm not going to read it. And then we had a little take from Niraj Agrawal. He tweeted, "I'm sorry that your warrantless surveillance regime was built on the assumption that people would always need intermediaries to transact." And then you kind of come back to, because most places that you get Bitcoin, like say you buy Bitcoin today, if you buy from Coinbase or if you buy from Strike or if you buy from really any exchange, uh, you have to provide KYC. So they know you have the Bitcoin. Okay. So a lot of times people don't want the government to know that they have the Bitcoin. Um, and there's ways to do that. I mean, you can buy Bitcoin off of BISC, right? Or any other peer-to-peer exchange. And it's no different than going to the swap meet or like my example earlier of buying a couch for $100 cash, right? You get $100 of Bitcoin from somebody, you pay them $100 through whatever mechanism, and that's that. So you can do that. It's a little harder to do it that way, but you can do that. And so, but I think for most people, the vast majority of their stack is going to get KYC'd, unless they're, working for Bitcoin and then they're getting paid it. But then, if you have to file taxes, you still have to report, that as income and all that. So at the end of the day, why do they want KYC? Well, I think number one is they want to make sure that you pay your taxes. So, if you sell your Bitcoin, they want to be able to know so they can get the tax money. I think that's number one. But then number two is they just want to know where the money's going and they want to know who's using it. And, in some extreme case, if the government wants to seize your Bitcoin, like say they want to, like they seized gold or, told people to turn in their gold, um, then it would help that if they knew that you had some, and KYC allows that. But they're not going to, I mean, if they come to my door, I'm not going to, they can arrest me, I mean, and if it gets down to that, I'm probably going to have to leave the country. I mean, if it's illegal to own property in the United States, then what's the point of living here? Honestly, if they try to do what they did with gold and confiscate Bitcoin, let's say, or outlaw the ability to self custody it, which is ridiculous if you think about it. How do you even enforce that? What is that? Um, so, but that's the direction that we're headed. So, we're going to just have to see how things play out. But it's going to get a lot worse before it gets better, is my suspicion. And you really have to filter the noise out. And it could just come to the point where civil disobedience is going to be the only option. I'm sure when they said turn in your gold or you're going to go to jail and have to pay a hefty fine back in Franklin Delano Roosevelt did his little executive order. I'm sure there were lots of people that said fuck the government and they kept the gold, in their basement or in the floorboards or whatever, and the government didn't send troops door to door looking for gold, right? You just couldn't do anything with it for a long time because it was illegal to own. But at least you could pass that wealth to the next generation, you know. But certainly the utility of it went down a lot. Um, Although you could transact peer to peer with gold if you needed to during that time, and as long as everybody was willing to keep it on the down low. So that could be where we're headed, folks. Um, Not gonna lie, but again, it's important to understand the news flow and understand what's signal and what's noise here, and also why Bitcoin doesn't really change because of all of this. It's still there, and we'll get to that towards the end. Okay, next up is Phoenix Wallet to stop serving U.S. customers on May 3rd. So this was, I think, a reaction to the FBI warning. This was posted on April 26th. On May 3rd, 2024, Phoenix Wallet will be removed from U.S. app stores, announced the project. Recent announcements from U.S. authorities cast a doubt on whether self-custodial wallet providers, Lightning service providers, or even Lightning nodes could be considered money services businesses and be regulated as such. We are removing Phoenix Wallet from U.S. app stores and will be assessing other potential impacts to our operations, said ACINQ, the developer behind Phoenix Wallet. The project developer added that users from the US should empty their wallets by going to Settings, Close Channels for Android, or Settings, Drain Wallet, iOS. We highly recommend not force closing channels as on-chain fees could be significant, added the developer. I actually had a Phoenix wallet with a small amount in there, so I closed it. But of course, it's taking forever to confirm because the fees are super low, but that's fine. Um, Same thing happened, I think, with Wallet of Satoshi a while back. Wallet of Satoshi is a custodial Lightning wallet, but they also pulled out of the US, although the wallet still works. I mean, I could still receive and send. So I guess as long as you have it downloaded already, you can still use it. You just won't get updates, I guess, on your phone. But this is obviously troubling because, being able to have a Lightning wallet is a great way to, use Bitcoin for small transactions and to do so in a more private and much less costly way. So, again, maybe this is an overreaction, or maybe they're spot on, but in their action being taken, but it's obviously, kind of piling on the bad news of the week, starting with the arrest of the samurai guys and then the FBI warning. So um, again, it's, you know, we'll just have to see where things go. I think that there's a lot of people that are committed to digital privacy, and for legitimate people. We're not talking about criminals. We're talking about like average people that just don't want the government to know everything about them. And so I think the developers in the space are going to come up with, new solutions, and new ideas. And I think there's going to be a lot of innovation here because, you can't stop open source software, and you can't really stop freedom tech. And sort of when you try to close one door, another door opens a lot of times with this stuff. So the government's going to keep cracking down, but I think the industry is going to keep coming up with solutions around this. And of course, nothing changes Bitcoin. It is what it is, and we'll talk about that again towards the end. This was an interesting one. This is from BitcoinNews.com. This was posted on April 28th, so today. The DTCC says Bitcoin ETFs have no collateral value. So this is a real gut punch for uh, financial companies that have Bitcoin exchange traded funds. The Depository Trust and Clearing Corporation, or DTCC, has made it clear that it will not assign any collateral value to exchange traded funds with exposure to Bitcoin or other digital assets. This means that these investment instruments will not be eligible for collateral impacting their use in financial transactions and credit facilities. The DTCC is a financial services company that provides clearing and settlement services for the financial markets. It's essentially a central securities depository and a clearinghouse for various financial transactions, including stocks, bonds, options, and derivatives. The DTCC's move concerning Bitcoin-linked ETFs has attracted the attention of the Bitcoin community. The decision, announced recently, has significant implications for investors in the Bitcoin market. According to DTCC's notice, effective April 30th, 2024, ETFs with digital asset exposure will face a 100% reduction in their collateral value. This decision, part of DTCC's annual review, aims to mitigate risks associated with these assets within the financial system. The announcement declared that ETFs or comparable investment vehicles containing Bitcoin or other digital currencies as underlying assets will not receive any assigned collateral value. Custodia Bank CEO Caitlin Long hailed this decision, expressing on Platform X, "I have no problem with this because it reduces the leverage-based financialization games that Wall Street could have played and upon which TPTB would have blamed Bitcoin for the inevitable problems, even if they had nothing to do with Bitcoin itself." And she's got a point. I mean, the first thing that popped into my mind about this was the fact that, you know, all the games, this financialization, these leveraged games that are being played behind the scenes, um, you know, if somebody if somebody collapses, right, that's borrowing based upon these assets, which are not their assets, they're your assets. It's like your pension plan, whatever. Um, and the counterparty can just take those assets. And if you haven't read this, you should read the Great Taking. It's a free book that was written by this guy, and it's on YouTube as well. It's quite fascinating. He goes through this whole thing about how um, you know we slowly went from physical custody of stock certificates to having your broker custody to having them all consolidated within DTCC, and that when they're cross collateralized with stuff, it sets up the potential for those assets to be taken when there's a financial failure, and it's all perfectly legal. And so knowing that, I'm like, wow, that's great, because if Bitcoin ETF doesn't have any collateral, they can't take it. If it's not being used as collateral for any financial transaction, they're going to take the bonds, they're going to take the stocks, they're going to take the derivatives, they're going to take all the other assets, but the Bitcoin ETFs. So in a weird sort of way, it's actually good in a sort of scorched earth, end of the world scenario. The DTCC's decision has sparked discussions about its potential impact on financial institutions and brokerage activities. While DTCC's move restricts the use of digital asset ETFs as collateral within its system, it does not universally prohibit their use in all financial transactions. Digital currencies enthusiast Ko Cryptowaludis emphasized that despite DTCC's stance, individual brokerage firms may still choose to accept Bitcoin ETFs as collateral based on their risk management strategies. Ko Cryptowaludi added that the utilization of Bitcoin ETFs for lending purposes and as collateral brokerage operations will persist, contingent upon the risk tolerance of each individual broker. The introduction of spot Bitcoin ETFs in the United States has garnered significant attention from institutional investors. Within just 3 months of their launch, the ETFs have accumulated over $12.5 billion in funds, indicating a growing acceptance of Bitcoin in traditional financial markets. The total assets under management of all Bitcoin ETFs, including Grayscale Bitcoin Trust, currently stand at over $53 billion. However, recent trends suggest a slowdown in net inflows to Bitcoin ETFs. While the introduction of the ETFs was met with enthusiasm, the overall increase in investments has tapered off in recent times. Well, it's because the price has kind of gone flat. Well, actually, it's down probably 15% from where it peaked, and it's sort of been just going sideways. And so that's not interesting for a lot of traders. Multiple ETF issuers have reported significant outflows, indicating a potential shift in investor sentiment on market conditions. Analysts have weighed in on DTCC's decision, offering insights into its potential ramifications. Some analysts have raised concerns about liquidity issues that could arise as a result of banks reducing their exposure to Bitcoin ETFs. Bitcoin analyst Hodl Magoo mentioned that the DTCC's decision may lead to banks backing ETFs and Bitcoin to either sell off their assets or decrease their involvement in corporate bonds. Yeah. Well, anyway, that's an interesting one, and a good thing to watch. But like I said, I don't really think it's a bad thing, and I'm kind of with Caitlin on that. Speaking of Caitlin, this next article is also from BitcoinNews.com, was posted on April 28th, so today. Custodia Bank to appeal denial of access to Fed master account. Custodia Bank, a Wyoming-based digital asset bank, is locked in a legal dispute with the Federal Reserve over its quest for a master account. This account would grant Custodia direct access to the Federal Reserve's payment systems, bypassing intermediary banks. The ongoing legal saga highlights the complexities and challenges faced by digital asset institutions in integrating into the traditional banking system. The legal battle between Custodia Bank and the Federal Reserve spans several years, starting with Custodia's application for a master account with the Kansas City Fed in 2020. Despite Custodia's efforts, the Federal Reserve Board of Governors intervened in the decision-making process, leading to delays and ultimately a denial of the application in 2023. A Federal Reserve master account refers to an account that certain institutions, like banks or depository institutions, hold with the Federal Reserve. This account allows them to conduct various transactions with the Federal Reserve, such as depositing funds, withdrawing funds, and settling transactions. These accounts play a crucial role in the functioning of the U.S. financial system, providing institutions with access to the central banking services offered by the Federal Reserve. Having a master account enables institutions to participate in activities such as clearing checks, transferring funds between institutions, and accessing liquidity through discount window lending. In March 2024, Judge Scott Skobdal ruled against Custodia, stating that Federal Reserve banks have discretion in granting master accounts. Despite the setback, Custodia remains determined to challenge the decision. The bank has now filed a notice of appeal with higher court, seeking a review of the lower court's rulings. Judge Skobdal emphasized the potential risks of a race to the bottom among states, highlighting unless Federal Reserve banks possess discretion to deny or reject a master account application, state chartering laws would be the only layer of insulation for the U.S. financial system. He added, and in that scenario, one can readily foresee a race to the bottom among states and politicians to attract business by reducing state chartering burdens through lax legislation, allowing minimally regulated institutions to gain ready access to the central bank's balances and Federal Reserve services. The judge noted that federal laws do not mandate the Federal Reserve to give every eligible institution a master account. Custodia argues that without a master account, it is limited in its ability to provide custodial services for digital assets, impacting its competitiveness in the market. The bank contends that the Federal Reserve's denial of its application was arbitrary and capricious, violating the Administrative Procedure Act. According to Custodia CEO Caitlin Long, recent cases have highlighted the Federal Reserve's broad discretion in denying new master accounts, raising concerns about fairness and transparency in the process. The outcome of Custodia's legal battle with the Federal Reserve has significant implications for the adoption of digital assets in the traditional banking system. While Custodia emphasizes the importance of digital assets in a rapidly evolving technological landscape, regulators remain cautious about the risks associated with them. Custodia operates under Wyoming law as a special purpose depository institution akin to banks. They accept deposits and provide custody services, but are restricted from lending customer fiat deposits, holding them entirely in reserve. Judge Skobdal's ruling raised concerns about a potential race to the bottom among states to attract businesses. His quote here, if Custodia's position was correct, it would effectively mean that every depository institution chartered under the laws of the state, regardless how soundly crafted, is entitled to a master account. And their next steps are they're going to continue to fight this. So we wish them luck, and hopefully they're able to get a federal charter. Although I don't know. It doesn't look like it's going their way. So we'll see. Next up, this is from Bitcoin.com. We had another bank failure, and probably not many people even knew about it. Republic First Bank fails, triggers minor crypto market downturn amid banking sector concerns. The United States witnessed its first banking failure of 2024 with the closure of Philadelphia-based Republic First Bank, creating ripples within the cryptocurrency community as Bitcoin, Ether, and various altcoins experienced slight price drops following the announcement. This event has spurred discussions among crypto enthusiasts and investors, with some seeing bank failures as a compelling argument for the adoption of cryptocurrencies as a more stable financial option. The Pennsylvania Department of Banking and Securities seized Republic First Bank on April 26, with the FDIC taking over its assets and nearly all deposits, and its branches are set to reopen under Fulton Bank amidst the backdrop of a troubled banking sector that recorded 5 failures in the prior year. So this is probably the first of many. I think Jay Powell even said expect more bank failures. It's interesting when crypto sells off. It always does whenever there's some kind of an event, whether it's a war related or economy related, and then it tends to just bounce right back. Typically, I would think, bank failures would send people into Bitcoin, not away from it. But that's not how traders think. So, and last is an interesting article. It's part of a series from Bitcoin Magazine called "10 Steps to Self-Sovereignty." This one is entitled "Bitcoin is Built to Last: How the Network Defends Against Attacks." And I thought it would be a good way to sort of finish up, just to kind of remind ourselves about why we Bitcoin, why it's nothing's really changed, regardless of how hard the governments are coming after self-sovereignty and use of Bitcoin. And so I thought it would be a good way to sort of wrap up this week's news. So Bitcoin is one of the most robust distributed systems in the history of mankind. For 15 years, it has ticked along block by block, with only 2 disruptions in its first few years that were very quickly handled by responsive developers the minute they manifested themselves. Aside from that, it has ticked along, producing a block roughly every 10 minutes with no interruptions. This reliability has set a golden standard of expectations for Bitcoin users, encouraging them to view it as a completely unstoppable system. In many people's minds, Bitcoin has already won, and the world is just catching up with that realization. Bitcoin is inevitable, as many would say. This doesn't mean that Bitcoin is literally unstoppable, though. There are possible events that could cause massive damage or disruption to the network if they were to occur. We're going to go through a few of these examples today and see how they would likely play out. Government intervention. Bitcoin represents a serious conundrum for governments worldwide in multiple ways. First, it functions as a system allowing global payments to flow from one user to another, irrespective of borders or financial controls. But while governments can't stop the overall Bitcoin system from continuing to function, they can introduce regulations to impact its participants. In order to really disrupt the Bitcoin network itself, governments would have to go after the miners that actually add new blocks to the blockchain to keep the system progressing forward. This was done before in 2021 when the Chinese government banned Bitcoin mining. Almost 50% of the network hash rate went offline as Chinese miners began migrating to the rest of the world. The network kept on ticking. In the worst case scenario, the Chinese government could have enforced confiscation of mining hardware. That would have left the CCP in control of all those miners, which could have been put to use engaging in a 51% attack on the network, but that didn't happen. Even if the confiscatory approach had been taken rather than simply enforcing a mining ban, it would have been deeply unlikely to succeed in attacking the network given the complexity of coordination among collaborators. For example, one of the places large amounts of hash rate migrated to was Iran. Lots of rumors circulated at the time of miners bribing Iranian military officials in order to get their machines past customs into the country. If governments attempted to seize mining equipment and closed borders preventing equipment from being shipped internationally, the possibility of bribing government officials or illegal smuggling them out is very real given the financial incentive to do so. For such a seizure event to present an existential risk to the network itself, a government would need to be able to seize over 51% of the active network hash rate. All it would take is a small enough percentage to sneak through the borders to ensure that what was left to be seized did not surpass that 51% threshold, and the network would remain safe. As hash rate further decentralizes around the globe, the possibility of such an action creating a risk to Bitcoin itself continues to shrink. While it still remains a possibility, the more governments that would be required to cooperate to pull off such a move, the less likely such an event is. Bitcoin's resilience shines through, as empirically demonstrated by the actions of the CCP in 2021. Power grid failure. Bitcoin miners cannot function without electricity. They're computers at the end of the day, so that's an obvious reality. This presents a big risk to miners who depend on power generation and delivery infrastructure. Many natural disasters can cause power failures and issues with the grid. Hurricanes, wildfires, extreme weather events like cold snaps can disrupt power infrastructure. A prime example of such events impacting hash rate was seen in Texas during Winter Storm Uri in 2021. The scale of these events, however, do not directly pose a systemic risk to the Bitcoin network. Texas losing power, even with 30% of the network hash rate located within the state, would not bring down or destroy the Bitcoin network. As shown in 2021 during the Chinese mining ban, even with 50% of the network hash rate going offline in an incredibly short period of time, the network continued to function. Yes, the block time interval increased dramatically and induced a large spike in transaction fees to confirm transactions quickly, but the network itself continued functioning and processing transactions without interruption. Even if we were to imagine a much larger scale event, such as a massive solar storm knocking out power for half the entire planet, the other half would still have functioning power. The miners located in that half of the globe would continue mining, continue confirming transactions, and the network would march along functioning just fine for half the planet. Even people on the half of the globe without power, as long as they have maintained a physical backup of their seed phrase, will still have access to their funds whenever power is restored, or they can make their way to a place with a functioning grid. Power would need to be taken out for essentially the entire planet to actually kill Bitcoin. Otherwise, it will keep chugging away in a corner somewhere until power is brought back online and it can regenerate itself, expanding back around the globe. Internet disruptions. While the internet is composed of decentralized protocols in a similar fashion to Bitcoin, the actual infrastructure underlying it is owned mostly by large multinational corporations and governments, again, similar to Bitcoin infrastructure like miners. The ownership of this infrastructure is still relatively distributed among many players globally, but it is not the same degree of distribution as a highly decentralized system like a mesh network. There are still rather large choke points and bottlenecks that, if disrupted or attacked, can cause a massive degradation of reliability and functionality. Almost everyone connects to the wider internet through an internet service provider. This market is dominated in most of the world by a handful of large providers in any given region. There isn't much choice between providers, and this represents a large choke point for people interacting with the internet. If an ISP filters or denies you access and there isn't another provider to choose from, you're in trouble. Similarly, your inability to talk to someone on the other side of the world is due to larger backbone networks run by major corporations and underwater fiber optic cables along the ocean floor. These cables are highly centralized choke points for communications between different countries and continents. If the operators were ever to begin filtering information passing through them, or someone were to physically sever the cables themselves, it could cause massive disruption of global internet traffic. So what could actually be done if either of these things happened? If an ISP started filtering Bitcoin traffic to users, people would have their nodes disconnected from the network. Broadcasting transactions might be impossible depending on how harshly the ISP filters traffic. But the rest of the network would keep chugging along. Services like Blockstream's satellite feed exist, and a Bitcoin transaction is such a small piece of data that any momentary connection to an unfiltered network would be enough to broadcast your payments. Even larger scale interruptions of connections between countries or regions amount to a simple irritation in the grand scheme of things. Let's say a country like Russia had its internet connection to the outside world completely severed. If Russian miners didn't shut down, the blockchain would fork into two separate chains because miners inside and outside Russia would not receive each other's blocks. Whenever that connection was repaired, whichever group of miners had mined a longer chain would simply overwrite the shorter one, erasing the transactions that took place on the other shorter chain. There is also a high possibility such a chain split doesn't even occur in such a situation. Blockstream's satellite service offers a way for people, even without the internet, to continue receiving blocks in real time from the rest of the network. This, in combination with satellite uplinks, which are not as simple to block, or even radio relays, could allow Russian miners to continue mining a single blockchain with the rest of the network through an outage. Yet again, Bitcoin's resilience can find a way. So wrapping up, Bitcoin is not quite literally invincible or unstoppable, but it is unbelievably resilient in the face of disruption or adversarial attack on the network. It was literally designed to function this way. The entire point of decentralized networks is to be robust in the face of threats and disruptions, and Bitcoin has succeeded amazingly in that design goal. The world has and will continue to see incredibly massive destructive events, whether that entails weather events or cosmic events, acts of intentional sabotage or warfare, or just plain old government regulation. Bitcoin has survived many of them already. It will most likely continue to survive everything thrown at it in the future. It's not invincible, but it's resilient. The type of event or disaster it would take to actually take Bitcoin offline permanently would be something of such a massive scale of destruction that in the unlikely event it does occur, we will all have much bigger problems than Bitcoin ceasing to function. And certainly when you look at the things that they're talking about here relative to what we've just been talking about in terms of government regulation, effectively on-ramp, off-ramp type stuff, it's pretty small in the big scheme of things if you really think about it. And then to wrap up, I did want to mention this week's Bitcoin Fortress newsletter post. Articles entitled Simplified Guide to Bitcoin Self-Custody. Yes, you can. So check that out. And if you're so inclined, please become a subscriber. It's free, but you also have the option of a paid subscription if you want to support my work there on Substack. Thanks for listening to the podcast. If you enjoyed the show, please like and leave a comment. Also, don't forget to subscribe on your favorite podcast app so you don't miss an episode. I enjoy listening on Fountain because I can earn sats just for listening to my favorite podcast. You can also, again, follow my Substack at bitcoinfortress.substack.com. And you can follow me on Nostr. My Nostr and pub is included in the show notes. And with that, I will talk to you all next week. Bye-bye.